takes pleasure in attracting a stellar list of speakers that address today's most relevant issues. The club's place as a refuge for rich discussion and networking has never wavered after 123 seasons.
We are dedicated to encouraging debate on the issues that matter to this city, this province, and this country.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Khadija Wasim, and I'm a director at the Canadian Club of Toronto. As the world looks to repair the economic destruction of the COVID pandemic and deal with the lasting mental health effects of a world effectively put on hold, it is important to make the connection between financial wellness and mental health. How do our finances affect more than just our pocketbooks, and what can we do about it? Today, we're joined by our expert panelists to hear their advice on how to better understand the control we have over our finances and how organizations can support their teams in navigating financial influence mental health issues. Before we dive into today's topic, here's some information about how to participate with us. The click here to switch stream button helps you to find whether your internet is slow. And honestly, with 2020 pandemic, we know if it's slow or not, so we'll be able to pivot. The video quality may be decreased, but the audio quality should remain strong. Once you click the questions tab, you can enter your questions in the window and they will send it to our moderator. The request help button located in the bottom right corner of the page is for technical support. Thank you to today's sponsor, Morneau Chappelle. Thanks to their generous support, today's event was free of charge. The Canadian Club is a nonprofit and we've been gathering people together for 124 years. It is because of our sponsors that we continue to do that. We are grateful for your support of today's discussion. So I'm really excited to introduce today's speakers. Jackie Porter is an award-winning financial planner. Bruce Sellery is a personal finance journalist and immediate past president of the Canadian Club of Toronto. Idan Shlesinger is a president of Retirement Solutions and executive vice president at Morneau Chappelle. And Shannon Simmons is the founder of the New School of Finance. Today's expert panel will be moderated by Melissa Leong, author of Happy Dough Money. One of the club's traditions that has not changed despite the pandemic in this virtual world is a toast we make to our country. And if you have a drink nearby, join me in a toast to Canada.
To Canada.
Canada.
Melissa, I'll turn the Canadian Club podium over to you.
Thank you so much, Khadija. I love how you turned it over to me and I'm chugging my drink. Thank you so much for everyone. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. This is such an important topic. We've got a fantastic a group of experts on the panel today. And so this is going to be illuminating, inspiring, and dare I say, a little fun. So I'm just going to dive right in with my first question to Idan. Idan, how are people feeling about their financial well-being right now?
Oh, thanks for that question, Melissa, and thanks to the Canadian Club for hosting this event. I think it is a very important topic. It's an incredibly important question that you're asking, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic and the related lockdowns that we're all going through right now. We actually just finished doing a survey and we'll be launching our Financial Wellbeing Index in February, specifically to measure how people are coping from a financial standpoint. And I think the biggest message that really came out of the research that we're doing, and this is thinking about employers, is that you as an employer don't know as much about your employees as you think you do. I'll focus maybe on just 3 key findings that did come out that I think will be surprising to a lot of employers. The first is that financial uncertainty is the biggest driver of stress for people today. There's strong connections to mental health, to physical health, to productivity, engagement at work, but really it is this financial uncertainty that's driving things. And I think what's really striking here is that we're going through a global health crisis. And yet what we're seeing is that the biggest impact on people's overall well-being isn't medical, it isn't isolation, it isn't loved ones. It's, am I going to be okay in terms of money? And when we go just a little bit deeper there, the single biggest factor that determines whether somebody is likely doing okay or is really struggling right now is whether they have access to emergency savings. And we think about what these really are, and this is not a huge amount of money, but an amount of money that's available to people for unexpected expenses. But there's another layer to it, which is it seems that this notion of having some excess funds available gives people a degree of freedom. It gives them a degree of confidence. It's a question of, if my job is affected, if I need to make a move, if I need to make a change, can I do that? Or am I in fact trapped? And I think that that feeling of being trapped is where a lot of people are right now who don't have access to those excess funds. So if people care about the mental health of employers, care about the mental health of their employees, they really can't ignore this financial aspect. So that was the one, I think, somewhat surprising finding. The second I'll call out is that we found that 4 in 10 people believe that they are struggling with their finances significantly more than others of the same income level. Pause and think about that one for a second. It's saying 4 in 10 truly believe they are doing worse than others who make the same amount of money as they do. And I think this points to a few things. I think one is there's a bit of a lack of understanding here. There's a strong emotional aspect to what we're talking about. But interestingly, it kind of breaks the link between income, between how much do I earn and how am I actually doing financially. In fact, when we actually looked at the results, they tend to be pretty stable across income levels, which is probably very counterintuitive for a lot of people. But it really means that people with higher salaries aren't necessarily doing better than people with lower salaries. There's really a notion here of challenge that's maybe more around confidence, behavior, not necessarily just how do I get a higher salary out of this. But I think the good news, I guess, is that it does create a bit of an opportunity that if we can address education, confidence, behavior, we can actually help people move forward. And then maybe just the third finding I'll touch on very briefly, and this is specifically, I think, of interest to employers, is that almost a quarter of the people surveyed admit that their financial concerns are directly impacting their ability to focus at work. And again, if we step back and think, we're all in such a weird work environment right now. We're dealing with remote and technology. We're dealing with family who could run in at any moment. We're dealing with all these challenges and all these issues. And yet, for a quarter of people, the biggest thing impacting their ability to focus at work is their financial stress and their financial strain. I think what that does really point to, though, is for employers, there's a really strong vested interest in trying to help their employees in dealing with their finances. And as employers are being more focused on mental health and total well-being, the financial piece has become that much more critical. So really, as I think back, and again, there's a lot more there, but to summarize what we're seeing financial stress is a huge challenge right now for so many people. It is highly emotional, it's highly charged, it's impacting people at work. But the good news is there are real opportunities to improve, and there's things that we can do to help people get out of that.
Thanks so much, Idan. We look forward to seeing more of that research. And I completely relate to that comment you made about people bursting in on us at any moment, because I am always terrified that my small children will just randomly jump into the shot and I'll have to push them away and shush them. But Bruce, you can't help me or other working parents with that. But given all of this stress, given the issues with confidence and some and behavior that Idan was talking about, Bruce, what kinds of best practices would help our overall mental health and our overall approach to money?
3 things. The first and most important thing, to the extent that this is possible, given what everyone is dealing with, is to understand the source of the anxiety for you, because it's very, very personal. I mean, when some people look at the dollars in their bank account, this is what they see. There's not a lot of money there because their business has been closed. And other families, this is what they say. There's tons of money. There is a surplus. That is not the issue. But it is not to say that this person has less stress than this person, because the issues are so multifaceted. So I think it's very important to understand the source, both in terms of tangible things, like things you can measure. You run a restaurant, the restaurant's been closed for 8 months. It's very clear that you're not going to have a lot of money in the bank account. But the other thing is the intangible stuff. So I was having a conversation yesterday with someone who's going through the beginnings of a divorce. The amount of money is not what is causing the stress. It is going through the financial discovery as they move into the settlement. That's what's causing the financial stress. The second part is to access the resources, a resource, something. And there are so many resources out there. There are books, there are nonprofit credit counselors, there are money coaches and fee-only planners. There are other supports like a CBT, online CBT service called Beacon. There's traditional therapists. There's so many out there, and they're not just for the people who have buckets of money to spend. There are inexpensive resources out there. There's also your friends, right? There are people in your life who probably could be really helpful if you reached out. The third thing in terms of best practice is to focus on a plan, some sort of a plan. And it's difficult at the best of times. It is so much more difficult when you have so many weights on your mental health in all sorts of areas. We talk about young kids. I've got an 11-year-old. She's e-learning. She may well pop in and say hi. Who knows? She might be feeling like she's missing her sequined, pencil case and come in looking for it. So
why do you have that, Bruce?
I have that because it's soothing. It's soothing. Kids talk about how soothing it is to move the sequins back and forth. So, you got to have it nearby. I think action is one thing that when you have the momentum and when you have the mental health capacity to move, it makes such an extraordinary difference because it is virtuous in nature. Goethe, the German poet, talks about action. He says, whatever you want, you need to begin it, because action in itself is filled with magic, power, and grace.
Thank you so much, Bruce. That's excellent. I love that sparkly pencil case.
There's more down there. I bring props. I always have props.
Love it. So when we talk about action, Shannon, when you talk with your clients, what specific actionable tidbits, what financial moves can we make to combat the stress?
Okay. So I think that why we want to combat stress, or what's a big cause of stress that I'm seeing, and this is to everyone's point that they've made already, when you feel like, like the cat in the hat, this mess is so big and so deep and so tall, I can't clean it up. There's no way at all. And it really feels like that with your money sometimes. I often say that your money anxiety is kind of like an 80s CG movie where the monster is scarier and then you see it and you're like, oh, it's not scary. So the first thing that you want to do is map it out and actually look at it. And so that sounds so simple, but so often if we're coming from a place of stress, we're not sure and uncertainty, we don't even want to look at it because that means we have to take action, and that can be scary sometimes because we're not sure what action we're supposed to take. So you will never know what action you're supposed to take unless you actually look at where you're at. So the first thing I would do is kind of taking a hard look, opening up those bank apps, looking at what's coming in and what's coming out, and just ripping the Band-Aid off, and mapping out. I don't like the word budget. So I like to use strategic spending or cash flow, wherever your cash flow is going every month. And the second thing that I would say is once you kind of realize what's coming in and what's going out, using kind of micro timelines is a huge way to take that positive action and reduce stress, because it gives you a sense of control. So especially right now in the time of a pandemic with so much uncertainty, if your income's been disrupted or something, making a plan for the next 6 months feels futile, because who knows what your life is going to look like 6 months from now. But maybe 6 days from now or 6 weeks from now, you feel like there's a little bit more control. So, okay, I'm going to look at the money coming in and out for the next 6 weeks or the next 30 days. And I'm going to make a plan within that 30 days, because that makes me feel like I can do something. I can sort of predict it. I have that sense of control. And then we want to make sure that we get the biggest bang for our buck with whatever financial goals we're going to do. So if you're in a situation where you've lost your income or your income's been disrupted, maybe just breaking even is the ultimate goal for you over those next 30 days or those 6 weeks. And that's okay. Letting yourself off the hook for that. These are unprecedented times. If you're in a situation maybe where your income hasn't been disrupted and you want to start moving the dial on your finances to kind of reduce the stress and anxiety it's causing, the first thing I would always do, you want to look at your debt. Consumer debt has a way of robbing us of our emotional confidence. It's not just about paying interest. It's actually about the fact that debt feels like you're paying off the past versus building a future. So it can be something that is really emotionally satisfying once you get the ball rolling. So starting with that consumer debt piece, knowing that the big emotional return on investment there is it's gonna happen for you one day. And then I would build that emergency account that we were talking about. And I think the pandemic, the one of the silver linings is that people are talking about emergency accounts with bright eyes these days. And I remember a year ago, I'd be like, full emergency accounts, and everyone would yawn and be like, ugh. So build that emergency account up. And then once you have, debt under control, you've got a little bit of money stashed on the sidelines for a rainy day, that's when you can get to like the sexier stuff, like investing and, your nest egg and all that stuff. So those are the 3 things that I would do to give yourself some confidence, take back a little bit of control, and make it slightly more predictable to combat that uncertainty that's out there right now.
A little bit of action does make you feel like you have a little bit more control, like you are a little bit more empowered. So I love those. And I love that emergency funds are now sexy. Right?
They always were, Melissa. They always were. Y'all are just seeing it now. Yeah.
The best kept secret out there.
Yeah. So with we talked a little bit about actionable tidbits. We talked about mindset. We also talked about maybe some therapeutic things that we can do, like rubbing our sparkly pencil case for to relax. Jackie, do you have any other lifestyle tips, any other things that we can do to just lighten the mental load amidst all of this financial tumult?
Yeah, I think, I'm listening to your story about being a parent, all of these parent stories on this call. I'm a person who has no children, so my heart bleeds for all of you. I just want you to know, because the struggle is real for working parents right now. It really is. And I see it in my practice. And it's even more acute for healthcare workers. So I think about this one client I have who owns his own practice, healthcare practice. And he's actually been pulled into the hospital setting right now. So 2 things have happened to him that's been a bunch of things have happened to him that's been pretty significant. One being he's been pulled into the hospital setting. So he's seeing the effects of COVID in real time. And he tells me about, seeing young people pass on from COVID and how, emotionally destructive that can be. He's also seen the drop in his income from his practice because of lockdown measures. He's dealing with having his children and wife at home, all of them working from home and doing online learning. So it's just a crazy time. And then you couple all of that with also seeing, the investments go up and down, go down in March, then start to recover. And then, the election, we talk about all of that, right? Happen, and then the investments start to recede. So, I've been talking, clients like this off the ledge all year, right? Because it sometimes might feel like the right thing to do is go over that ledge. And truly, it's really reminding them what their investment goals were in the beginning. Why did we buy the investments that we purchased? And, has anything changed? No, nothing's changed. And also reminding them, if we were to come out of the market, in March or when the election was happening, what would be the cost of selling then and then waiting for the media to tell them, okay, it's safe again to get back into the markets? How much of a premium are we going to pay for the same investment we just sold out of a few months ago? And so they got a chance to see all of these things, right? And, I just had to remind people that, the media is not your advisor, right? Like, that's not where you want to be getting advice from. They know nothing about your personal circumstances, nothing about your goals. And the reality is the news media and social media is there to sell you stuff. And unfortunately, selling often includes, making people scared and making people feel greedy sometimes, right? So all of those things are not great reasons to make investment decisions. So, probably the biggest tip I could give your community, this community, is practice good social media and news media hygiene. Be careful how much, news you consume and how long you stay on these social media platforms, because they will have a very negative impact on your health, on your mental health.
That's excellent. That's an excellent piece of wisdom, Jackie. I've been trying to practice that in my own life. And so it is. And money is obviously my wheelhouse, but I still get wrapped up in all of the news and all the negativity and the comparison game. And so that's excellent. Thank you. And so we have been getting some really great questions from our wonderful audience. And so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat box. And I am going to share some of these great questions with our panelists as we go. And our first question is from Dan. Dan has asked, if someone is stressed about their finances and can only handle one big change at this moment, what would you recommend that be? So what is the one big tip, just one big tip that you'd give someone who is struggling right now with their finances? And this is open to any of the experts.
I jump on that?
Yes.
I would automate one piece of savings, just make it happen, and make it happen automatically. So the day that the money comes in, it never even touches your bank account. You'd be surprised that even, $10 a month or whatever it is that you can afford to, or whatever you think you can part ways with, automating it, it'll start to accumulate, and that builds that momentum, that snowball, that excitement that you can actually save something. So automating it and making it not a choice, I think is one of the most powerful things that anyone can do to start savings or make any sort of shift in their finances.
My one thing, I love Shannon's, my one thing would be to calculate your net worth. I do that every single January 1st, but I think it is such a powerful exercise because it pulls together everything that you own minus everything that you owe. And one of the big insights for some people in this tumultuous time is even if they have a horrendous year, just a horrendous year financially, it is 1 year across a career that will likely last 40 years. So for people who have been successful and have been above water for the last 10, and this is going to be a horrible year, maybe it's a horrible 2 years, there is still a very strong probability that they're going to be able to get back on course and have another 10, 20, whatever many years in the future. And that bigger picture is really helpful. And for some people, the net worth exercise can be a really compelling way to go, okay, I'm going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
The only thing else I was going to say is I'd love to know, because I have these clients who tell me about their 3 a.m. in the morning anxiety attack about their finances. So what is it? What is that 3 a.m. anxiety attack? What are you thinking about that's causing you so much stress around your finances? Let's zero in on that and create a plan for that. So if it's debt, it's kind of what Shannon was talking about. Let's open up those credit card statements for 2021 and see what they say and how much interest you're paying. And let's attack that. And, first and foremost, get rid of the credit card debt. I loved how you put it, Shannon. It's like last year's regret that's still haunting you. Let's deal with that first. Right?
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add, I think those are fantastic suggestions, is just to build in the notion of, I love the term micro timelines, but just that notion of do something and don't think of it as overwhelming, as big, as I have to fix my financial life, my financial future. Look for the one little thing that you can start doing and start building momentum from there. I think there's a paralysis out there that just sends people into a panic, and just starting to take action makes a huge difference.
Thank you. Those are all incredible. Love them all. I wanted to ask each of you, and this is just something maybe that you've seen in your private practice or in your own experience or anecdotally, looking back at 2020, what money trends did you find the most interesting?
Can I start this one?
Yes,
because
Jackie.
and I'm probably going to get, Edan's name wrong. It's Idan, right? I was going to sort of jump off on some of the things you said in the beginning about people not necessarily feeling good or confident about their finances, no matter what their net worth is or what financial shape they're in. They're always feeling like they're doing worse, and that mindset piece. And, you know, that kind of comes back to people comparing themselves with how they think their neighbor's doing or what they see on social media, people who seem to be doing better than them with the bigger car and the more vacations, a little less, right? And then I think all of that leads them to something I call comparisonitis. And whenever you compare yourself to how you think your neighbor is doing, FYI, they say that if a millionaire, someone who won the lottery, moves into your neighborhood, there are more people who end up being broke in that neighborhood. So don't necessarily follow what your neighbor is doing. It's always better to zero in, emphasize the positive in your specific financial situation. What are you doing well? Build on that. But once you start going down the road of comparisonitis, it will lead you to feel worse about your financial circumstances and less confident. So like, think about, like, there's always something you're doing well about your finances, double down on that. And I think those are some of the trends I'm seeing. And I think those are some of the remedies that we can look at to attack and address those.
Well, I'll jump in with what I was seeing in 2020. One of the things that I've had you know, over 550 meetings since the first lockdown. So I've seen a really wide swath of the population, those who lost their incomes, those who are constantly up and down, and those who kind of were doing the same, and everything in between, homeowners, renters, whatever. But one of the things that I've seen a lot of with people who are homeowners specifically is while interest rates are very low right now, and so I saw a tidal wave of refinancing, which is not a bad thing necessarily. So we're just talking about trends, and refinancing can be a great way to pay off higher interest debt, like consolidate if you did have any consumer debt or anything like that. So that's great, and saving money on your mortgage. But I also saw a tidal wave of, you know, I'm sure everyone is going to giggle at this if you are in that situation, or if you know someone in the situation, of home renovation and home spending, and you know, really investing in more toys if you have kids, and like backyard playgrounds if you have kids, like, you know, a whole bunch of the patio, the porch, the hot tub, whatever. And so a lot of this was funded not necessarily with savings, but a lot of it was funded with very cheap access to debt from a refinance. And so that's not to say that it was bad. I think that I would just say it was definitely a trend. And my only sort of red flag to anyone who may be in that situation or making that kind of decision as to whether or not to do that, I totally get it. I think that we're all trying to find the happy medium, if you think of like a Venn diagram, between emotionally satisfying and financially responsible, because being one or the other is no fun. And so you want to find something that's squarely in the middle. But just making sure that you do have a plan to sort of repay it at some point, because when you just because you have access to this much money doesn't mean you necessarily need to spend all of it. And it's very tempting right now to do a lot of that and do that kind of emotional spending, because it's very satisfying and you feel like you're solving the problem in the short run. But just keeping that long term, maybe like, you know, 3 or 4 years on the timeline in your mind right now, and making sure that you have a plan so that you don't lead to more anxiety. That's really what that's about, because in the moment it feels good, but are you spending at a rate that's going to create more anxiety and stress in your life than the short-term relief that whatever this investment in whatever a play structure or renovation or whatever is giving you? That's the question that I would leave with you.
The trend that I have noticed is the enormous engagement in the stock market, which overall is great. Like, people are paying attention. They're asking me how to do it. What should I do? What's going on with robo-advisors? Can I DIY it? All that is virtuous. I have been around a while. I have seen the booms and the busts. I've been covering the market for a long time. And so it's not to say that I'm going to make any prediction on what the stock markets are going to do in the next 3, 12 months, 3 years. I'm not. But what we know as people who've watched the markets for a long period of time is that they go up and they go down. So I think in this current moment, there is an enormous amount of optimism about the US political situation, the potency of the vaccine and all that. But markets are hovering at these very high valuations, and performance has been so strong that I do wonder in the back of my mind, for those people who are relatively new to watching the market and investing in the market, that they're not fully fully aware, they don't grasp that there will be a correction. It is going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it will happen. And so do they have, from a financial wellness perspective, the resilience to watch those investments fall without doing irresponsible things?
You know, can I jump in on that, Bruce? Because I've seen that as well. And I call it this FOMO, which kind of goes almost back to the comparisonitis thing, is they fear on missing out on returns that they think their neighbors and their friends are having. And that, will concern me because, I have clients who they don't necessarily feel comfortable with a certain level of risk, but all of a sudden now they're asking me about Bitcoin and these sexy technology stocks that they've heard about. And I'm like, but you're like, you filled out this questionnaire as like a balanced investor, and now you want me to talk to you about these things. What about if we look at the worst case scenario of what that could do? Are you going to be comfortable with that? And these are some of the things that, definitely concern me as the markets, recede in the future, and we never know when that is. But you don't want to start having those conversations around risk and the drop in the markets at that time when people emotionally they're in their head, they're in their heart, and they're not necessarily prepared to remember that they're like, yeah, I want you to put me in this Bitcoin investment. This is what the market is doing. So it's just really, it's kind of like talking some people off a ledge and then other people reminding them that we need this guardrail. We have this guardrail here for a reason, because you've always said to me that, you saw your family lose money in the markets and all of these things, and you have all this emotion around it. And this is the most risk you're comfortable with.
I could just jump in there. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think the other thing that's just been striking is just how different people's responses have been and how many different types of reactions and different experiences people are having in what seems like a common environment. So I think we're certainly seeing that increase in spending, the home renter piece. I think what I've actually always found funny is what you can't get at any point in time is telling you a lot about what people are doing. You can't get lumber to build a deck because too many people are building decks. You can't buy a basketball net. You can't buy, it's incredible to see how these things flowing out. Treadmills or even dumbbells actually you couldn't get at some point, which is just amazing. But at the same time, we're definitely seeing some people are increasing their savings and they are squirreling away money. And the question that we're really asking here is how much of that is intentional? How much of that is people are thinking, this is a scary time. It's flagging to me how important it is to have money around, so I'm going to do that. And how much of it is just a simple question of, I was planning on a vacation and I couldn't take it. I'm not going to restaurants. I'm not going to sporting. So we've got this money that's kind of building up. And it feels like it's just building up under people's mattresses. And they don't have a plan. They don't know what they're going to do with it. And what actually really scares me about that is how much of that money gets spent instantly as soon as things open up. How many people immediately say, I owe myself the vacation. I owe myself, the restaurants and entertainment and all the things that we've been depriving ourselves of for so long. And so even the people who are making some financial gains do actually lose that as soon as things open up.
Shannon, were you going to add something?
No, that's an excellent point. I was just going to say there's all kinds, everyone's experiencing this in like different ways. And I was actually going to say there are people that are saving as well right now too. But that was perfect.
Yeah.
So for those who are actually saving more, who have more disposable income these days, what should we be doing with that money to ensure financial success beyond the pandemic and even now?
Oh, who's going to take that? Come on, that's such a good one.
You go, Shannon.
Oh, I kind of touched on this earlier. And it's like, if you are in a situation where you're saving more money right now, first of all, kudos. That's actually, I don't know that that's the common experience right now. And to Idan's point, being mindful about it and strategic about it. I think not just letting it hang out there. So again, looking at that consumer debt, making sure that we're focusing on putting money there. If you haven't already been able to consolidate that and you have this extra money, it can be such an emotional win to do that. Making sure that you've got that emergency account. And what I really want to deep dive on there for a second, and somebody else call me out on this, because this is something that, not call me out, but I would love to hear another perspective from somebody on the panel. I get asked the question all the time, how much should I have in my emergency account? And here we are touting about them without actually giving any sort of boundary around it. And I kind of feel like that's like asking how long a piece of string is, because everybody's emergency is different. And with your lifestyle will dictate, and what's at risk, or how much your monthly nugget is, if you were to lose your income, and what the specific risks are. So that standard 3 months of your expenses is what everyone kind of expects to hear. But I find two things wrong with that. One, some people, that's a really high goal for a lot of people. Imagine that your whole house broke even for, if you cut out trimmed all the excess spending out or whatever, and you had basic grocery and daycare and like your bills, and everything came to like $5,000 a month. And I sit here and say, well, you need 3 months. That's $15,000. Who can get there realistically? And so then what happens is you have people just being like, yeah, right. And then skipping over that emergency account because it really doesn't feel realistic. So I often say to people, it's not so much about an amount. Sure, there is an amount that's custom to each person that I think should be your new zero. But what I really care about is the actual habit of taking a chunk of money every month and chucking it somewhere into like some sort of slush fund. And I'll give you an example. Like I had this one client, he felt really comfortable if he had $5,000 just sitting at the ready. Like that was his number for him. And then he would put $100 away every month to that account. And then I met with him a year later, and he was all bummed because he was like, well, I put my $100 away every month, but now it's sitting at like $4,800 because this happened and this happened and this happened. And I kept having to use it. And I'm so frustrated. I'm like, no, it's working. Like, yay. That means you didn't go into debt. And he was like, oh. So I think it's just kind of like this fluid account, and it's more about the act of building it. I would love to hear what other people think about that too.
I'd love to jump on that, because I talk to people, how you don't like talking about budgets? I love talking about spending plans with people for that very reason. So, people might have a plan to spend money on home repairs or car repairs over the course of, a year or 2 years or 3 years. But people don't tend to think in spending plans and in like 1, 2, 3 year cycles, because things are going to come up. So when we start talking about spending plans, some of the things they might say is, in 2 years, I'm going to need a down payment for a car. So how is it going to happen if we don't have a plan that we're earmarking money aside for that time frame, so you don't have to go into debt and start thinking about it then? And I think once we start looking at your spending plan, and even like what Idan was saying before about a vacation, let's put a spending plan for what you want to have accumulated. When do you want to take a vacation? Because a lot of people are saying, like what you said, Idan, I want to have a big vacation, in 2022 because I've been deprived of vacation for 2 years. Well, is it going to be your traditional vacation, or is it going to be a bigger, more, like for myself, a bigger, more, more exotic trip? Well, what will that cost? Well, let's put money aside for that now. Let's earmark that. And once we start doing that, and then we start talking to people about their long-term investment plans and all of their worries and fears, it helps me to put all of that into balance for them. So then we can start prioritizing from there. And I think that's a really important exercise to get people into, is this future thinking of what's your 1 year, 3 year, 5 year spending plan? Because things are going to come up. Let's not think about it in the moment. Let's start thinking about the future and start, earmarking things for the things we want to save for ourselves and for our families.
Idan, what advice are you giving to employers on how to best help their employees when it comes to finances?
It's a great question. I think employers are starting to look at this. They're starting to ask that question. They're starting to recognize that there is a strong connection between their people's financial health and overall health, mental health, engagement, and other aspects. So they're looking at this, and they don't really know where to start. I think a lot like a lot of other people when we talk here, it seems like such a big challenge to address. And because it's such an intensely personal one, I think employers are sometimes a little bit shy, a little bit cautious about stepping too far. But I think when we talk to employers, I think we focus maybe on 3 things to try to get them there. I think the first is really to understand your workforce and understand the challenges that they're having, and in particular, how diverse they are, how different everyone's experience is. One of the things that we found, which again, I think was surprising to me at least, was looking just at full-time workers, full-time employees. And we found that 1 in 10 full-time employed people are also participating in the gig economy to supplement their income. And so again, think about what that means. 1 in 10 people with a full-time stable job are maybe driving for Uber, maybe on Fiverr, on all these different venues to try and get some extra dollars. And these people are having the worst mental health experience of any group. It's actually much worse than people who are full-time gig workers, full-time on Uber or on various other gig type of jobs. So there's a real challenge there, and employers, I think, largely don't realize this. They tend to think if I've got people who've got a good job, who are doing well, they should be fine. And what I think employers need to realize is you've probably got people who are really struggling at all levels of income, and you have an opportunity to actually help them and to support them. The second piece we would look at is around education. I think we've spoken a little bit about this before. There is so much bad information out there. There is so much bias out there. There's people trying to sell you things. Employers are in a unique position to actually help their people. People usually trust their employers. They recognize that they're actually somewhat independent and have an interest in the people doing well. In the absence of that kind of information, though, people will turn anywhere else. And there's some good places to turn and some bad places to turn. Like the comment before that the media is not your advisor, I think that was great. I saw something earlier this week. It was a headline that read, here it is, terrible financial advice is going viral on TikTok. And I just shuddered when I read it. I don't know how many I saw that headline. But I think it's true. If people aren't getting good information, they'll reach out anywhere. And there is so much bad information out there that employers really do have an opportunity to make a difference. And then the third thing I'd say is, again, thinking about that diversity, thinking about how many different experiences your people do have, recognize that even though you're doing a lot for your people and provide, obviously there's paychecks, but there's pension plans and savings programs, investment programs, insurance, all that stuff is great. But one size isn't going to fit all. One size isn't going to help all your people. And so what we're really encouraging employers to do is to look carefully at the programs that they offer and think about what the objectives are, and are they meeting those objectives in what's becoming a much more diverse environment and a much more challenging environment. Different family structures, longer life expectancies, particularly for women in the workforce, less job security and stability. And so we're really telling employers, look at who your programs are helping, who are they not helping, and how can you actually improve? How can you make your programs more effective for more of your people more of the time? And not just rely on, this is how you've always done things, and let's just keep doing it that way. So
thank you so much, Idan. That's great.
Melissa, I want to add two other things on that. First is, from education, there is a level of engagement that a number of enormous employers in this country participate in that are really amazing. So one's Lululemon, right? So if you were to go behind the scenes at Lululemon, what you would find posted on the walls are worksheets that includes the employees' goals in multiple areas. This is a core part of the Lululemon culture and has been since the beginnings in Vancouver, right? So it's health goals, career goals, financial goals, whatever. And the store manager leads that exercise. So you not only have an intention around goal setting, but you've got a communal experience that really engages employees in a different way. The second thing that I would add is there is so much thinking, so much experience, and so much data to support the nudge. So the nudge is a behavioral economics term that there are so many virtuous behaviors that you can enable your employees to take by nudging them in that direction. The best example is the Save More Tomorrow pension results that they had in the US, where they basically auto-enrolled everybody. And if you didn't want that pension, you had to opt out of it. When you got a raise, the employer ensured that you increased your savings rate commensurate with the raise that you received. So there's, cultural and logistical, and there's a whole bunch of reasons why that becomes difficult. But a nudge that would be easy to do is at an all hands or all staff meeting to ensure that something connected to finance is a part of that. And, I think most of us on this call work with organizations. We speak to corporations. We are a part of their education programs. There's many resources out there that you can bring in to be a catalyst to your workforce such that they take action that is consistent with what it is that they want for their lives.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, so I'm going to quickly go through a couple of wonderful questions from our audience, and I'm going to direct them to an individual. And so the first one I have is for Shannon. Shannon, from Lauren, I saw a tweet about having Bruce, do you have a prop that makes a sound that would bleep me out?
Yeah, totally. It's my bleeping flamingo.
Yeah. So I saw a tweet about having a bleep off fund. Basically the idea that everyone should have an account separate from their partner in the event that their partner leaves or betrays them. That's some serious stuff, Lauren.
Heavy.
Do you recommend this practice? Should we always have separate funds from our significant other?
That is a complex question to answer. And I think that I have definitely had this conversation with lots of couples. And I feel like it really depends on the type of person you are, when it is that you, like how comfortable you are in that relationship, whether you're married or not. And I say that because in the event of a divorce, it's going to be split 50-50 anyways. Like there's that. But what I think fundamentally this comes down to is the question about what my mom used to call mad money. And I don't think that that's like a bad idea for anybody, especially anybody who's marginalized, female, anything where you feel like there might be a situation or an emergency where you need money tomorrow. So we're not talking about like splitting the divorce 50-50. If there's a moment where you feel unsafe or there's a moment where you feel like you need to leave and you need some first and last month's rent or something like that, having money that makes you feel safe is never a bad idea if that's what you need to not wake up at 3 a.m. with heart palpitations or anything. So I don't think there's anything that's wrong with having some mad money for yourself. Where I would say I would look at maybe a bigger, when I think that it goes from being mad money or the F off fund, if you will, into where, hiding money from a partner is also a practice that I can't really get behind in a way as well. So money is one of the top reasons that people divorce. I've seen it all. Nothing shocks me. And often when we start to find that we're hiding money, I would say it's an indication that there's a bigger problem there. There's a reason you don't want this person to know once it goes beyond that mad money that's just for you. And so really looking at why do I feel like I can't be honest here? Because one of the things that I've working with clients who are married or getting together or divorcing, having honest, vulnerable, real conversations about money is critical for the health and well-being of that relationship, because it's otherwise you can breed resentment and guilt and frustration and anger over time. So a little bit of mad money scrolling away, 100%, I'm there for it. Let's make sure that we're aware of when it becomes an indication that there might be resentment or some other issue that's going on outside of just a little bit of mad money that makes you feel safe.
Can I jump on this? Because it's something I'm really, really passionate about. I think that every single woman should have what I call a you, me, and a we account, which is we should have money, because we do have money in the TFSA. That's a me account, right? And we should have money especially because nowadays people are in second and third marriages. They're going to have money that they're going to need to set aside for their children, for specific goals that have to do just with them. And I don't think that's a bad conversation for couples to be having with one another. Mm-hmm. It might be motivating to have a you, me, and we account. So things we're doing together, things we want to do on our own. And, that's actually what real life looks like in 2021, right? So I just think it's something that we don't necessarily, as you're saying, Shannon, we have to be secretive about. It can be a real conversation.
That's my point. Yeah, just no secret.
No, we're like, this is my you account. This is what I'm going to do. That's your me account. And this is our we account. And this is cool because this is what life looks like. You have your, motorcycle. I'm going to get my motorcycle by the time I'm 55. It might actually motivate me to put money in our we account for the things we're doing together. So it's just some of the things we have to start talking about and having real conversations about.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bruce, there's a follow-up from Farah about your net worth suggestion.
Does it involve my flamingo? Do I need to bring my flamingo back to?
I think so, just because I love it. It's awesome. Do you have financial templates that you can recommend, or some sort of tool for calculating your net worth yearly, and any other financial wellness tools that you think are just so awesome that you need to tell us about?
Well, I write about net worth in my first book, Moolah La, Why Smart People Do Dumb Things with Their Money and What You Can Do About It. And so I think if you Google, how do I calculate my net worth and my name, you'll see me talk about it on Cityline or CBC or whatever. It's a calculation that you can do in an Excel spreadsheet, and it's super simple. So it is all the things that you own, your assets, your house, your car, your investment balances, minus what you owe, your liabilities. So your credit card debt, your mortgage, the $10,000 you owe to organized crime, all that. And then at the bottom is the net worth, the calculation. It can be positive, it can be negative. It doesn't always go up over time because people have job loss and divorce and illness and all that kind of stuff. So I think that is certainly worth it. The other thing, just to tie back to resources on financial wellness, is one of the things that I think is really important to identify is the genuine intersection of money and traditional mental health practices. And one that I've been focused a lot on in the last couple of years is cognitive behavior therapy. For people who aren't familiar with that, it has been proven to be effective in lots of different areas, but in finances as well, because basically the assertion is that our thoughts give us our emotions, and our emotions drive our behaviors. And you need to be ruthless with your thoughts and compassionate with yourself about your feelings. So there are these cognitive distortions that all of us make that are basically tricks that our mind plays on us to have us believe things that aren't true. It's personalization and blame, like somehow it's your fault that your restaurant closed down. Like, we're in a pandemic. It's overgeneralizations. It's all these sorts of things that can be so disempowering, like jumping to conclusions. Because you missed your credit card payment this month, it's going to happen forever now, all of a sudden. So I think that's really important for us to identify what those thoughts are, such that we can have more power over those thoughts, and that will affect our behavior over time.
This is for anyone, actually, to jump in and answer the question that Louise has shared, which is, where can I find a fee-only financial planner if I do not have a large net worth?
Shannon Lee Simmons is on the panel.
There's so many good fee-only financial planners in Canada. So FPAC is also the Financial Planners Association of Canada, and FP Canada has a registry as well of all financial planners in Canada, but they are specified in there whether they do fee only, also sometimes called advice only. And there's a list in there as well. And then there's also advice only planning.ca. So there's a lot of different places in Canada where you can find sort of like a registry. And if you Google or put into a search engine, fee only financial planning Canada, you're going to have those various those various registries that will come up, and you can search there by making sure somebody what credentials they have, like a CFP, for example, and then you can usually see how they charge in their hourly rate or something like that. So obviously, I'm a huge fan of fee only financial advice.
Melissa, I want to just leap in here with the definition, because I get this question asked all the time. Fee only or advice only is when you cut a check. So you're paying for a service, and it could be a couple of grand depending on the scope. Fee-based is when it is a percentage on the assets under management. So you've got someone and they're managing your money and they charge you 1% or 1.5% of those assets. That person will take you on in that way if you've got a certain amount of assets. If you got $5,000, they're not going to take you on. And then the third structure is a commission-based environment. And this is typically what you find at your bank branch, right? Like, they're going to sell you a mutual fund, they're going to get a commission on that, and there's going to be a management expense that you will pay over time. So those are the basic models. And I think that's an important definition as you think about like which is going to be the best fit for me.
That's right. And some people like myself do a hybrid where I charge advice if people just want to pay for advice, or I do the fee-based, which is a percentage under management. So people have those options as well.
Maybe if I just point out one other thing, if you do work for an employer who has an EAP, an Employee Assistance Program, very often those will provide either financial information or direct financial advice directly through the program as well. So that could be available to a lot of people as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, especially since we've been talking about how sometimes your emotions can lead you astray when you are under stress during these really challenging times. So sometimes it helps to have a second opinion, someone to be your coach, someone to guide you. And so in wrapping up, we've had a lot of fantastic questions. We've had great discussions. I just want to address each of the panelists and ask them a single question, each of you, to share what you think should be one money priority for 2021.
I would say being financially resilient in 2021 means thinking about the secondary stream of income. I think lots of people who relied on, I mean, it's funny because Idan was talking about how when people have more money, they don't necessarily feel more confident, and there's the people with 2 jobs. That has to me sounds like someone who doesn't have the financial literacy. So more money isn't necessarily going to solve the problem, but definitely having a secondary stream of income means, especially I deal a lot with women who are on their own, single women, and having that secondary stream of income means that if all of a sudden we have a pandemic or you lose your job, there's another stream of income you can rely on other than that one salary. And you never know, your secondary stream of income could lead to your next full-time gig, right? So I just think that's one of the things that we should have on our radar when you think about the restaurants. Even if you're a business owner, look at what complementary income stream you can add to your business, right? I think these are some things that definitely are some of the lessons we've learned from 2020.
Yeah, I would say the main thing is just to make a plan and have a plan. Don't let the panic and the fear control you and drive you. We know there's enough panic and fear in the world right now. But this is something that you can actually take on and you can manage, and don't let it be too overwhelming, but make a plan and focus on what are the small first steps that you can make to start improving your situation.
Melissa, money is a tool. It is a great tool. That is all it is. It doesn't say you're a good person or a bad person, a hard worker or lazy. It's just a tool, like a screwdriver, like Zoom. It's a tool. So make 2021 the year you get better at using the tool, whatever that means for you. If it's about consumer debt, if it's about investing, whatever it is, get better at using the tool.
Those were all so excellent. I think mine would just be about maybe a mindset thing, about not losing hope. I think that a lot of people, even if they haven't lost their income, there's this a little bit of hopelessness that's setting in with people across the spectrum for me. And I think that when we start making decisions from a place of big decisions in our life, when we don't have hope, a place of panic mode, they are decisions that we might regret down the road. And so keeping your eye on the long game and not losing hope that, you know, you can do this and that anything does count. I often get asked, you know, when is it too late to start saving for retirement, or how much is too little to save? And it's like, there's no such thing. There's no such thing. So anything that you can do counts, and don't lose hope in the long game.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. That was so excellent.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this was so much fun, Melissa. The only other quick thing I would say, just, I don't know why I keep wanting to say Idan. Idan, please correct me if I'm not getting your name right, please. But anyway, the only other thing I wanted to leave your audience with is, if you don't have a plan for your money will ultimately have a plan for you. So don't be that person.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. It's been a great hour. I hope that people found the hour illuminating and inspiring. And I there's just so much there that I think will motivate people and better prepare us for 2021. We don't know what's coming around the corner, but definitely I think having all of your wisdom and your expertise is so great. And I loved what Shannon said at the very end. It's just hope. I think that's a great way to approach the next year, with hope and a new attitude about money and just life in general. So thank you.
So I'm just going to take that pass on to me then. Thank you for that. As a TikTok watching, finance advice taking Gen Z who was in her final year at Rotman studying finance, but I never had the finances to really do anything with it. But I am so, so grateful for this conversation. And I know all hosts say at the end of it, like, oh, the time went by so fast. But honestly, the time went by so fast. And this is all like, these were tidbits that are so applicable to our lives. To your point, Shannon, like I might not have $1,000. I might not be one of those portfolio managers that have more than $10 a month, but any money that is saved is money, and that is important. And I'll be sure, Idan, to take your advice and find an employer that has an EAP for me. So all of this stuff was super, super amazing. Jackie, Bruce, Idan, and Shannon, thank you so much for your advice and wisdom that you shared. And Melissa, thank you for such an engaging moderating today's session. I so enjoyed it. I really, really did. And yes, we hope you'll join us for some of our upcoming events. On Wednesday, January 27th, we'll host Victor Dode, President and CEO of CIBC, to discuss the responsibility that organizations and leaders have when it comes to building a sustainable, inclusive economy for the future. As someone who's had the opportunity to hear Victor speak a lot, he really, really is so candid. And whenever he does these speaking ops, he really, really gets into it. So I really hope you join us for that event. And on Thursday, January 28th, we host a panel of Chief of Police for Ottawa, Waterloo, and Kingston to discuss policing in 2021, the challenges and changes facing Canadian communities. That was a lot of C's, but that is such an important conversation about what's happening in our world with policing, BLM. All of these things are such important conversations, and I hope you join that. Thank you once again to Morneau Chappelle for sponsoring today's event. Our events would not be possible without our sponsors, so thank you so much for your continued generosity. Thank you to our AV team, Van Valkenburg Communications, and MediaEvents.ca for making it possible to make sure we don't have too much white space and you are engaged with what we look like. So thank you for making it possible to come together virtually today. And once again, thank you for joining us. Please stay healthy, safe, and well, both financially and mental health wise, as we've gathered from this event. Have a wonderful day, folks.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thanks.